Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and Little Rock Public Radio.
And hello again, everyone, and thanks very much for being with us. It has been a half century since a dozen nations proved that our nation's energy supply wasn't guaranteed. Today, it's not an oil embargo that threatens our society and the economy that supports it, not just an embargo, but an energy shortage, we are told, is not out of the question. And we'll take that up in just a few moments. But first, Washington, by way of Arkansas. If November 5th was a discouraging day for Democrats, it was a Tuesday that rewarded Republicans with the presidency and the Senate while keeping the House red. Control of both chambers by their party and the seniority system will give Arkansas 6 members additional leverage. And with more on that up top in this edition, independent journalist Steve Brawner is here. And in the nation's capital, Alex Thomas, Washington correspondent of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. He's also host of the paper's podcast, Arkies in the Beltway. Alex, you're on the scene, so to speak, so we'll start with you. And it's tough to know where to start because so much is going on, but let's start with what's called the upper chamber. Mr. Cotton, the junior senator from Arkansas, enters the leadership ladder, climbs it. He's third ranking now.
Yes, sir. And that's a really interesting situation for Arkansas. The fact that you have a member who was not part of the leadership team now joined that leadership team. He beat Joni Ernst. And you may wonder, why is that important for Tom Cotton? In his 10 years up here in D.C., he has built a national profile, making national media appearances. Leading up to that November 5th election, he was on the campaign trail, working to not just get 51 seats for Republicans, but 52, 53, trying to build that Republican majority as big as possible. With that conference chair role, that number 3 position, he's going to be in charge of leading the messaging for Senate Republicans for at least the next 2 years. That's a big deal for Senator Cotton as he continues to build his national profile.
And he seems to have made it clear, no one knows for sure exactly how serious a candidate he was for a cabinet position, but he's indicated that, no, I like the legislative branch at least for now.
You know, we talked to him around Halloween, and I asked him straight up, if Donald Trump does end up going back to the White House, do you want to return to the Senate or do you want to go with him? And Senator Cotton laughed for a moment and said, I would appreciate the opportunity, but I think I could be more effective in Congress, staying in the Senate, doing my job and representing Arkansans.
That said, though, he has, as you noted, Alex, a second ago, he has quite a few IOUs. He's been out in the heartland for the last several years anyway.
Absolutely. Working on the campaign trail, working to build up some of those Senate Republicans. But also keep in mind, he was flirting with the idea of running for president in 2024. So with him, being in the Senate, staying in that role, building his profile can also build up his resume for if he wants to run for president down the road, whether that's in 2028, 2032, whenever that may be. He's going to have a healthy resume to present to Republicans and to other voters.
And the calendar is kind to him, Steve Brawner. Mr. Cotton is young.
He is. He has plenty of time, which meant he didn't have to rush running for president this time. He has 20, 30 years or more, as we were seeing past election cycle. He's also been reported to be in line to be chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So we will see if that actually happens, but he's definitely the number 3 person in the caucus now.
He has the bona fides. He has a resume that lends itself to a national security or defense position.
Sure, decorated Army veteran and just a very defense hawk. There's no question about his bona fides in this area. So he's in good shape.
Yeah, Alex Thomas, back to you. There is a lot of discussion and controversy over whether Mr. Trump will seek to bypass the normal order of business and use recess appointments to get some of these controversial appointments through. Any indication regarding Mr. Cotton's position on that, or Mr. Bozeman, his colleague from Arkansas?
Well, everyone's still trying to get their feet wet right now. John Thune just became Senate Majority Leader, trying to prepare for the next year. And day one, you're already having some controversial picks. Matt Gaetz out of Florida, possibly being Attorney General. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. leading Health and Human Services. But right now, everyone's still getting their feet wet. We're going to reach out to our guys in the coming weeks once everybody kind of gets their bearings. It's safe to say that it's been a little bit chaotic this week as everyone's been trying to adjust back to the usual legislative congressional schedules. But now everyone's getting a little bit antsy, a little bit squirrely, trying to figure out what they're going to do come January 3rd when that new Congress begins.
Well, while we're still on the Senate side, Mr. Bozeman is about to assume a chairmanship that once belonged to the woman that he defeated.
That's right. He's going to become Senate Agriculture Committee chairman come January. And as you mentioned, Blanche Lincoln served as that chair for about a year and a half before she lost to Senator Bozeman in the 2010 election cycle. And that's a big deal for Arkansas, not just because it's an Arkansan leading the committee, which would be a big deal, of course, but what happens with the Farm Bill? Lawmakers were supposed to pass that just about 2 years ago. They have yet to do so. And now Senator Bozeman may be holding the keys to the vehicle to get a Farm Bill done, protect Arkansas agriculture producers, and also keep in mind, most of that Farm Bill involves nutrition programs like SNAP.
Yeah, it's as much or more urban than it is rural, the Farm Bill. Do you have a sense, Alex, of the timetable for a Farm Bill now? I mean, this year's out of the question, it would seem, yeah.
When I talked to Senator Bozeman back in September about this, and even this week, you know, there is an interest in trying to get this done, and that's not just among Republicans in the Senate, it's among Democrats in the Senate and both Republicans and Democrats in the House. But the problem that they're trying to overcome here is what to do with nutrition spending and what to do with some conservation dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act. So it's going to be interesting seeing how they play out over the next few weeks before we leave Capitol Hill for the holidays. We may see another short-term extension. But at the same time, though, there's a lot of questions up in the air. But the other factor here, Steve, and I've talked to producers about this, is they can't just get by on an extension. A lot of them want an ad hoc bill, trying to get some relief in the short term. That way they can farm beginning next year, not have to shut down their operations.
Okay, let's go on to the House side. Steve Brawner, we've got 4 members of the House, and they are all positioned pretty nicely.
They are. They've been here for a long time now. Representative Crawford and Representative Womack have been there since 2010, and Representative Hill and Representative Westerman have been there since 2004. Or they were elected in 2014.
Yeah.
So 14 years for Crawford and Womack, and 10 years for Hill and Westerman, and they have been flying back and forth from Washington D.C. to their districts, toiling sometimes as the minority party when they couldn't get anything done, all for this moment when they have the seniority and the majority at the same time. And so they're in positions now to make a real difference for Arkansas. Representative Crawford is seeking to chair the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, which would put him in charge of the policy side of highways, bridges, transit, rail transportation, and he is in line to do that if he can get elected. I think he thinks he will be. The current chair is term limited. At the same time, Representative Womack, Steve Womack, is chair of the subcommittee on transportation, housing and urban development, and related agencies among the House Appropriations Committee. This is a committee that's so powerful that its 12 subcommittee chairmen are known as cardinals, after the Catholic Church cardinals. So it is possible that next term Arkansas will have the chair of the committee that's in charge of transportation policy, and the chair of the Appropriations Committee that's in charge of funding transportation policy.
That's a neat fit.
That would be a huge deal. Now, not necessarily, neither one of these is set in stone. Representative Womack was a different Appropriations Subcommittee chairman in the last term. So it could not happen. But if it does, that would put Arkansas in a great position at a time when there's a lot of highway funding being considered. At the same time, Representative Westerman is currently chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, of the Committee on Natural Resources. He's also on the Transportation Committee. And then Representative Hill is seeking to become the chair of the Financial Services Committee. So between all 4 of them, all 4 could be committee heads at this time in a few months.
Yeah, the institutional situation looks pretty good from their standpoint, but Alex Thomas, that's a narrow majority in the House, and you need 60 in the Senate to get anything done. So are great expectations simply awaiting to be dashed here, or what?
You know, I talked to Representative Westerman about this yesterday, and he acknowledges that the Republican majority is going to be just as slim next year as it is in the current Congress, and they're going to lose members. President-elect Trump has nominated current House Republicans to cabinet positions. So he told me day one, we got to hunker down, we got to look down, we got to stay on task, do not get distracted, because the American public has handed Republicans a trifecta between the Senate and the House and the presidency. They cannot afford to waste time by doing what they did in this current Congress with speakership battles and Republican infighting.
All right, Steve Brawner, a guy that we've been covering here for, 30 years now, is off to Israel, although he's been there before.
Governor Mike Huckabee named American ambassador to Israel. This is really must be a dream come true job for the governor. He is a lifelong supporter of Israel, a lifelong traveler to Israel, and now he will be in the position of being able to be the primary conduit between President Trump and Israel. So this is a big deal for him, for his family, for Governor Huckabee Sanders. This is no doubt a job that he'll be moving to Israel. This is almost his second home. So I'm sure he's very, very happy for that. It'll be interesting to see what kind of policies he tries to enact. What the Trump administration does. It's obviously going to be a pro-Israel administration. We'll just have to see how they navigate this difficult, incredibly difficult minefield of foreign policy.
Well, his daughter, who is now governor of Arkansas and a former employee of the 45th and soon to be 47th president, her position would seem to be solidified by November the 5th.
You mean she's going to stay in Arkansas?
Yeah, and has decided, or has announced anyway, that she likes where she is for now.
She has, and don't want to read too much into this or try to imply too much. She didn't really spend a whole lot of time on the campaign trail, at least publicly. She was a little bit she was not an immediate endorser of the president. That doesn't mean she's not allied with him, has not been allied with him. But I think that it shows that her focus is on Arkansas, and she plans to be here for a while.
Okay, Alex Thomas, we got a few seconds remaining. Are there tea leaves to be read in any of this?
You know, I think with the governor, she said it, that she's very happy being where she is. She's looking forward to her reelection effort in 2026. I think it'll be interesting seeing what Arkansas Democrats do. Obviously, Chris Jones has been leading some outreach with rural efforts. So we'll see what happens with those folks.
Alex Thomas in Washington, Steve Brawner here. Come back soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more on energy in a moment. No one, or hardly anyone, would question that the phase-out of coal-fired electric generating plants will mean a reduction in air pollution and carbon emissions, but neither would anyone familiar with the demand for energy suggest that replacing those facilities would be effortless or painless, and certainly not immediate. But that's sort of the dynamic that's at hand in Arkansas. And here to assess our options, Lauren Waldrip, Executive Director of the Arkansas Advanced Energy Association. Glen Hooks is Policy Manager of Audubon Delta. And State Senator Mark Johnson of Ferndale, who sits on the General Assembly's Joint Energy Committee. Senator, let me begin with you. You have to keep one foot in the environmental side, another on the corporate or the economic development side. So where are we? This would seem to defy easy solutions.
Steve, it may not be easy. Matter of fact, it won't be easy, but it is simple. And the simple thing is we have a tremendous demand for energy. We need it for our economic growth. A lot of our recent economic growth has been because of the fact that we are a relatively low energy cost state. We have other advantages too, but we don't want to forfeit that by having our electric rates go sky high. And it's the old thing of you can't replace something with nothing. And these are not things that you can run down to Walmart and buy a generator and plug it in. We've got to make sure that our base load energy demand is met. And at least in my opinion, the coal plant moratorium or the phasing out may be too preliminary, and it's not saying that it wouldn't be appropriate, especially on the 2 older plants that are in question. But on the newer plant, the Turk plant of SWEPCO, it is the cleanest, newest, or one of the newest coal-fired plants in the world. And the emissions from it are not like the old days with the smoke billowing out. It's a different technology, and at least until we can come up with some replacements for that, we need to make sure that we're not going to put our citizens in a situation like Texas found itself in a couple of years ago.
Yeah, where they just ran out. Glen Hooks.
Hi, Steve. I think the right approach to energy production in Arkansas is to realize, first of all, that everything we do to produce energy, from solar to coal to gas to whatever, has a negative impact on the environment. The question is how much. And my job is...
What's acceptable?
Yeah, and we have to realize that all of them has some negative impact. But if we realize that what our goal should be is to pick the systems and pick the generation that gives the least impact on the environment and the most benefit to Arkansans. And that, in the last several years, has really been solar and now increasingly wind in Arkansas. We are finding ways to generate significant amounts of energy from solar. There are school districts, cities, businesses all over the state that are invested in solar, and they're finding that their rates are cheaper and they're using that money for other things. The classic example that we use in our community is the Batesville School District invested in solar and saved so much money they were able to give significant raises to all of their public school teachers in that first year because they saved so much money. I don't know anybody who could argue whether that's a bad thing or a good thing. That's a good thing, that we're paying school teachers more and we're having our communities polluted less. So investing in solar, investing in wind, investing in cleaner sources of energy is a very good idea. And Senator Johnson knows this, having been in the last session. One of the things that I think we did wrong in the last session was put up barriers to more solar in this state. I think we need more generation for sure, and we need more clean energy generation, absolutely.
Yeah, well, Lauren Waldrip.
Steve, we've known these coal plants are coming offline for quite some time, especially the 2 that are coming.
They have a lifespan.
That's right. And so, we know, actually to Glen's point, so our group operates and represents our membership based on economics and what is the most economically feasible. The good thing about renewables is that they are bipartisan. We know they're increasingly competitive in markets, and they're an opportunity for the state. I come from an agriculture background, and so I previously was working with some row crop farmers, and I personally saw them adopting renewables on their operations, and I didn't really know that much about it at the time, but I learned about it, and I had to testify on their behalf before the Public Service Commission, and I realized that this can be a really beneficial tool to have in our toolbox for not just those farmers and landowners, but for those rural communities. And it can also be one solution. Solar is never going to be a silver bullet, but Steve, at this point, with the energy crisis that we're coming up on, nothing is going to be a silver bullet. And so it's going to be a host of different options and technologies and programs that can help fill the gap that we're getting ready to come up on pretty soon.
Yeah, well, it's pretty soon. Senator, we are dealing with a timeline here that's, when you stop and think about it, it's kind of ominous.
And Steve, I think it was a mistake from day one to set such an ominous or ambitious, maybe is a better word, timeline. I asked myself, why would they do this? And I know that there was pressure from environmental groups to phase out coal and throwing all coal into one basket, that they're all bad, they're all the same, and they're not all the same any more than all nuclear is the same. But I think it's time that we revisit those deadlines. I'm not saying those plants should be there forever, as Lauren mentioned. There is a timeline. They wear out, they have to be replaced, and you'll reach a point where it would be not as cost effective to keep them open as it would be to replace them with something else. But I think that there were too many external indicators that were used to reach those decisions, probably political and ESG and things like that, that maybe we need to revisit in Arkansas and look at a reasonable timeline, so to make sure that we have the base load, and I'm a big fan of renewables, especially solar. I think that it's been very successful, and as Glen and Lauren have both mentioned, the Batesville example is a good example. We've got Walmart is pushing this. They probably have more acres of rooftop than anybody else in the state of Arkansas that can deal with solar panels. But the point is, renewables are an important part, but certainly not the only part, and don't help us meet our base load demand. And when it's cold and the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, as we dealt with during the Winter Storm Uri debacle that hurt Texas, Arkansas squeaked by with no major problems. It was a wake-up call for a lot of us seeing to see a scary situation. People died in Texas because of the cold and the lack of power.
Well, let me go to Glen Hooks with that. I mean, let's take it from there. Ambitious or ominous? I mean, or something in between.
Well, these two plants that are coming offline, we'll just name them. They're two Entergy plants, White Bluff and Independence, that are set to come offline in 2028 and by 2030, respectively. They shut down, not for political reasons or anything like that. It was that I was involved with another group at that point before Audubon that was working on coal plant issues, the Sierra Club, and we identified a significant amount of Clean Air Act violations that these plants were having, and kind of got us to the settlement table with Entergy to talk about what are we going to do about this. And Entergy made a business decision to go ahead and take these plants, schedule the retirement of these two big plants, and avoid costly litigation and a lot of fines that they were facing.
Lauren, these decisions, regulatory matters, ultimately they are decided in the political arena.
So Senator Johnson kind of mentioned this concept of base load, which we used to hear a lot more frequently, and that kind of assumes that you're going to have, one resource available running at all times to meet your energy needs. I think in reality, we're now seeing a mix of different types of resources that, when adequately planned, can come into play when necessary, and we can still meet the energy needs cohesively with that suite of options, like I mentioned. So our members, Glenn spoke to the environmental component. Our members, from an economic standpoint, the markets are pushing them to procure and use cleaner options, and so that's an economic force, and if we can't meet those energy needs, it's going to be lost economic opportunities for the state. We're already seeing data centers go into some of our neighboring states, and these corporations, these homegrown Arkansas-based corporations, are going to have to foot the bill for not having the types of energy that they need. We also know that renewables are more affordable than coal now. That used to be the thing that coal hung its hat on. It was that it was the most affordable, and that's just not the case anymore. And so these are the economic considerations that we have to consider when we're planning our resources.
Yeah, Senator Johnson, the General Assembly sits in just weeks. Is that you see any kind of shift at all that in response to Mr. Hooks here? I mean, any shift in environmental policy?
Steve, let me kind of go back a little bit and explain kind of where I came from on this. I supported the original net metering legislation that Glenn and Lauren supported. The amendments to that in the last session in 2023, I opposed those. I thought we made a deal with the industry, and the utilities flexed their muscle after they had agreed to the deal, and we found ourselves, I think, reneging on the deal. I voted against it, and I was pretty vocal about that. But it's because not just industry, but individuals that are wanting to put solar panels on their home or whatever need to have a trust that the government's not pulling the rug out from under them on the way that the energy is metered. Now, and Glenn and I agree on many things, and one of those, of course, being the need for nuclear. We need to go back to, they're developing smaller, more efficient, and standardized nuclear plants which can meet that base load need. But where we disagree is that we can fill that gap totally with renewable. I don't think we can, but most important thing is that we have reliable and that we do this in a methodical manner to make sure that, as I said, we can't replace something with nothing. And unfortunately, there is a lead time to develop these new sources.
They do take a while to build.
Yes,
Glen
sir.
Hooks.
They definitely take a while to build, and so the right time to build these things was, starting 10 years ago, right? The second best time to build them is now. We should have been on this a long time ago. And probably a related thing that's a good idea to bring up now is the need for more electric transmission capacity in this state. One of the things that is really troubling right now is that Arkansas, our home state, is in our region the #1 state with the most clean energy projects waiting in the queue, waiting to get online and put clean energy on the grid. Something in the nation of 38 gigawatts, which for those of you who aren't in the energy industry, gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. So,
seconds remaining, but go
right.
ahead.
So we need more electric transmission capacity in the state because the only thing keeping these clean energy projects from feeding clean energy into the grid at that massive amount is a lack of transmission capacity. You talk about lead time, it takes more than a decade to put a transmission project together. We should have been on this a long time ago, and now I know Lauren's group and my group, Audubon, we're really pushing for well-sited, well-thought-out, well-planned transmission that can bring more clean energy onto the grid and bring the economic development that comes along with that.
Problem with many faces. To the three of you, thank you very much for coming in. Come back soon and we'll continue the conversation.
Hey, right on.
And that's our broadcast for this week. As always, we thank you for watching and see you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and Little Rock Public Radio.